Alright, I'm working on my 2008 Mazda 6 here. We're going to be replacing the water pump in this today. This is the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder. Just to show you, I got a Motorcraft is what I'm going back with. This is the pump. Let me get it out here. This is what it's going to look like. And it's got this O-ring. We'll put some fresh coolant around before we slip it into place. So we're going to go ahead, first of all, I've got me a clean pan here. If your coolant is good, you can reuse this. There's no sense in just throwing it out. So we got us a pan, we got a big flat screwdriver, and we're just going to get started right here, draining it first. Okay, so you'll notice that I do have it on ramps. Now you could do this without ramps, but you're going to have a jack and be able to jack it up somewhat to get it up enough to do something. And we're also going to be needing to get a wheel off. But we come right here in the center of the vehicle, and you come back to right here, and we'll see that plug. And like I said, we're just going to use a flat. It works the best. And we're just going to go ahead and get this here to draining. So just take this thing completely out. It may be a little messy, but just go ahead and take it completely out. And we're going to drain this down a good little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and finish removing that. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and pop the hood and get our hood lifted up here. Okay, and with that, we go ahead and remove this cap, and this will allow it to actually do some draining. And so like I said, I'm just going to drain this down as much as will come out. I'm just going to let it drain, and I'm going to be recycling this. I'm just going to use something like some pantyhose to refilter it a little bit, just to kind of get any big debris out of there. So we're going to go ahead and let that drain. While we're at that, we're going to focus over here on this wheel. We need to remove our wheel. It's going to be 21 millimeters. Now I got it on the ramp, but I'm just going to get back behind it with my jack here and get it lifted up and get a jack stand on this side here first. Okay, so we've got it jacked up. We just got back here on our frame, and I just put some blocks and I put a jack stand right here on this part, just as a precaution, and we're just going to leave the jack there as well. And you can see about how high we got it up here just to make it a little easier. So now we're just going to get our 21 millimeter and break these, or use our impact to get them loose. If you don't have the impact, always break them loose before you go to jacking your vehicle up, or you won't be able to hold it. So let's go ahead and get this wheel off now. Okay, so we're just working on getting our lugs off here. Okay, with our wheel off, we can get in here. Got a 15 millimeter, and we're going to get right up here. That is our tensioner. So you see, you got your crank, and you look right to the left. Right there's the tensioner for your belt. So we have to get on that, and we're going to have to remove our belt. Now what I like to do is get a wrench on there and then get another one and just slip it on like this for leverage. There's not a lot of room in here, as you can see, and then I'll just give it a pull as much as we can, and then we should be able to slip that belt off there. So that's all we're going to do. Said push in that direction, and then slip your belt off. You may have to use an extra set of hands if need be. Okay, so there's our belt off and loose. You can completely remove it, or you can just come up here and slip it off and out of the way for the time being. Probably be a good idea to just go ahead and take it completely out of your way, because you don't want to be getting coolant and stuff like that on your belt, as it just starts messing them up. So we'll probably just go ahead and get that completely out of the way. Okay, with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and focus our attention. You can see right down here, that is the water pump. And that's just the pulley that's sitting on there. Now, I could probably work around this here, but I may take it loose just to clear up some extra space here. So we're just going to get started. Okay, so I'm just working on these bolts on the water pump pulley. Now, I'm just using a screwdriver against these bolts like this to hold it still. Now, you could probably try to break them loose with the belt on. Sometimes they can be pretty snug. But like I said, I'm just using the screwdriver wedged in between these just to hold it enough to break it loose. And then I've already broke this one loose, and then I'll just turn it and do the same thing. I'm just sliding it. And you know, you could hold it with other various stuff if you want. If you got a little belt strap, you could hold it without, but I'm just doing this to hold it still while I get these loose. And I'm just going to rotate it and just keep doing the same thing until I get them all loose. Okay, and just to show you, when I'm breaking these loose, I've just got this screwdriver kind of wedged up against this motor mount too, so I'm not really holding it. I've just kind of got it wedged and sitting there, and I'm breaking it loose just like that. Okay, so we've got these loose, and we're just going to reach down in here and just finish removing them. Once you get them broke loose, they're very easy, and I'm just going to use my fingers to finish removing this. And this is going to remove this pulley here, so we'll actually have a little bit more room to see what we're doing. And you can see we're just, you know, here's your power steering pump, and we're just right below that. That's our pulley for our water pump. And we're just taking them bolts out of there first. Okay, and there's our 3 pulley bolts. And now this is completely loose here. So we should be able to get in here and try to work this out. Okay, so there's that. Okay, now I don't know if you can see this. It's like some kind of looks like a belt or something had gotten wrapped around this thing at one time. So I guess it's been riding back in there. But anyways, we're going to get a hold of these 8 millimeters that are holding this. Now be careful and watch what you're doing, and don't go to taking the bolts out of your timing cover. You just want to take the ones that are holding our pump, and you can see that the first one, we got one right there, and then we got another one right down in here. So we want to get those first, and we'll just get down there with a little ratchet wrench. Okay, so just to show you, the first ones I'm taking off are these top 2 that you see right here, 8 millimeters. We got one that's hidden down on the bottom. So we're going to get the top 2 And then we'll get down there and get the one that's hiding on the bottom. So I just got a little small 1/4 inch drive, and we're just getting down here. Now also get you a little pan. You're definitely going to have some more coolant coming out of here. You can never drain all the coolant, it seems. So get you a little pan and put down here underneath this as well. And now all I'm going to do is get down there on that bottom one. Okay, now we're right here at the crank. I'm under the car. I could reach this from the top, but I just want to show you where this bolt is. And you can see the underneath of the water pump right there. And so right there you've got that other bolt hiding. Now you could get under here and reach it, or you could just fill around and get it from the top side there. It's up to you, but that's the only one that we got left. We're right in here in the fender well, so just go right up through there and get that last bolt, and have you a pan down here to catch some more of this coolant. Just be ready for that. Okay, so with those loose with that little ratchet, you can just reach in here and easily finish removing these. You can see that it's coming very easily. And there's the first one. We just took the very top one out. I'm just going to do the same thing to those other two there. Okay, I forgot to mention earlier, do make sure to disconnect your negative before starting this job. Now I've just went under and got the third and final bolt from underneath, and we've got a pan positioned down there to catch some coolant. And now we're just going to wiggle and try to get this thing out of here. It could be stuck a little bit, and I may in fact have to get one of my screwdrivers to kind of get a hold of a spot on this pump like in here and just kind of wiggle it, or pry on the front part. At this point it's not doing any good anyway, so it doesn't matter what I pry on the pump. So I may actually get one of my big bars and just pry against this front piece that bolts to the pulley, because it appears to be pretty stuck in here at this point, and I can't wiggle it by hand at all. Okay, now this is the type of pry bar I'm talking about. Now you definitely want to get a hand or it will go to flying off on you, but I'm just going to gently start prying in here and see if I can get this thing to move. But it does. It's a pretty snug fit apparently, and not wanting to move very easily here. So I'm just going to wiggle this thing and work with it here, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so working from the top and the bottom, I've been rocking this pry bar against this. It's pretty snug in here. I can just now see it starting to drip a little bit. So I've just about got it. I've got like a, you can see a little bit of a gap there. So I've got it pried loose somewhat, but it's really stuck. Really surprised me. But this thing has been in here for probably, I doubt it's ever been changed, and it's close to 200,000 miles, so it's really, never underestimate the way these O-rings and stuff can really stick into place. So I've just about got it here. I'm just going to continue rocking this, but just be careful, don't damage anything. I'm just kind of hitting against this front cover piece here. And I'm just working from underneath. I'll go under, and you can see I'm just kind of prying against the front of this part that bolts to the pulley. There's really not much else to get a hold of to pull on it any. And so that's all I'm doing. Okay, so we just now got it loose, and I just kept rocking that pry bar against it. You can see it's dripping there. And so we're going to go ahead and reach in here. You can see we got a lot more coolant coming out of this block here. So we're going to kind of easily pull it out of here. So we didn't have to do a whole lot of work there, but it was stuck. So we're going to fiddle it right up and out of here. You see how I'm bringing it out. And here is that old O-ring, and you can tell it's been on there a while. I mean, technically it's should have been changed a long time ago, but the thing really was stuck in there. Really remarkable how it stuck in there like it did. So we're going to go ahead and, like I said, put some clean coolant on that O-ring. That's all we need to do. And then we're going to slip it right back into place. We'll probably wipe that area off a little bit. You can see it just goes right back into that right there where it's machined out, and just fits right back into that circular spot. And we may use a little bit of Loctite on the bolts, but we're just going to wipe that down a little bit and just fit the new one right back into place. Okay, so I've cleaned that off a little bit, and I've got a little bit of clean coolant. Just rub that around that O-ring so it's not going in dry. And we're just getting ready to go ahead and just set this back into place. We're just going to work it back down through here the way we came. Make sure the top two holes are going to be facing upwards. So we're just going to work it right back down into here. And it's kind of have to feel around a little bit. It's kind of difficult to get started here. And but there we go. So we'll just make sure that we get it pushed in. It's just kind of sitting there right now. We got the top two holes. See, the one faces straight up, and that's going to face just like that. And we have to, it's a pretty snug fit, hence the reason that the old one really stuck on there. So we're going to have to get in there with both hands and push that back into place there, because that O-ring has to fit really nice and tight. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to push that and kind of twist it back into place now. Okay, so here's our 3 bolts. We're just going to go ahead and get those started. Okay, so all I've done is finger tighten the bolts here and here. We just got them all finger tightened, and it is easier to reach up from under here to get this bottom one. I found it easier to reach up under this fender well and get that bottom one that I was showing you from under here. You can see it right there. It's definitely a little bit easier. So now I'm just going to snug them down a little bit more with a small ratchet, and then we'll work on torquing them. Okay, these call for 14 foot-pounds. to 18 foot-pounds. I'm only comfortable with going 14 foot-pounds. These are tiny bolts going into aluminum. I get really scared and nervous. So I went 14 foot-pounds. Basically, my torque wrench, the foot-pound doesn't go down that low, so I actually used the inch-pounds, went 168 inch-pounds. The bottom one I had to do by feel because I couldn't get my inch-pound wrench down in there. So I'm happy with that, and we're going to go ahead at this point and put our pulley back on here. I'm going to put a little dab of Loctite on these little bolts, and we're going to get our pulley set back in there at this point. Okay, so we're just getting ready to set this pulley back into place here. And so we got our bolts. We've put just a little dab of this Loctite, you can see. And we're going to go ahead and start working these in and lining these up. Okay, so we got the first two started. A little bit tricky getting the first one in there, but once you get that one, it's pretty easy. Okay, so I've got them all finger snugged. I'm just going to be snugging them down really good by hand, and by that I just mean just getting them as tight as I can with my little ratchet wrench that I'm using. You could get to it to torque it, I suppose, if you used a little crowfoot thing on your torque wrench, but I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to be snugging it down really good. I've got Loctite on there. They're not going anywhere. So I'm just going to tighten them by hand. I can't really get in there, like I said, with my with the width there. I can't really get in there with my torque wrench to tighten that. Okay, so again, when tightening, I just wedge the screwdriver against two of the bolts while tightening the other, and I just rotated it till I tightened each of them as best I could by hand. So all this is good. Now we're ready at this point to go ahead and get our belt back into place here. Oh, and before I forget, if you want to torque those, then go about 160 inch-pounds, or go so it was 12 to 16 foot-pounds on those if you want to torque it. Okay, so we've just slipped our belt back on. You can see how it runs around the power steering down to AC compressor, makes a big loop back around the water pump pulley, down around the crank, and then it picks up the tensioner into the alternator over here. And that is pretty much it. Now, the way that I usually like to do this is I get everything kind of, and you can look these belt diagrams up, but doing this by yourself, I get down here and I leave the belt off of the crank. Get everything lined up, leave it off of the crank, just barely loose here, and kind of hold it so it doesn't fall off of your other pulleys. And then I push this as far as I can and then slip it on down here. And that works out pretty good. So you definitely have to get it all on there, leave it off of here, push as hard as you can, and then finish slipping it on the bottom of your crank. If you got a helper, it seems like it's easier to push the tensioner and then have somebody slip it on. This this power steering up here seems to work out pretty well, but if you're doing it by yourself, you got to slip it on the crank down there. So we've got that back into place, And so at this point we're going to go ahead and just get our wheel back on here. And then while we got it up, we've already put the plug back in. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I just pushed that over there. Definitely, if you got coolant, keep it covered up if you got animals around. But go ahead and while we've got it up on ramps, and it's actually better for it to be at an angle, so the air is going to try to work its way up through the top here a lot better. So we'll go ahead and start refilling the coolant. But first I will go ahead and get the wheel back on here. Okay, so I just used some old pantyhose just to kind of strain the coolant so there wasn't any particles in there. And I've already put about as much as I can. I got about 3/4 of the jug. I drained out about a jug, and I got about 3/4 of that back in here. And we're just going to go ahead and cap it off, and we'll just have to work the air out of the system and let it degas over here, and then we'll just kind of fill up this as necessary. So we've got our wheel back on. We'll just get our ramp back under here and get the jack stand stuff out from under here. We're just going to let it run and circulate this air out at this point. And we'll just let it idle and rev it up and stuff as needed, and then after it cools down, we'll see what it's doing. It should degas through here and suck back. If you keep this filled, it should suck back as it cools the coolant. Like I said, I've only got about 1/4 of that to go, and I'll have about what I had in there before. I mean, I probably spilt a little bit, not much. Okay, so I just let it idle for a bit, and I just finished topping off the coolant and took it down the road, and everything is doing well. Seems to be working as it should. So that's going to conclude the video. As I said, I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, give it a like. And as always, I invite you to subscribe, and I thank you for watching.